Today I had a conversation with Ryann Bee Gordon. She is the author of The Bridge Inside. It is a book based in Tulsa. I could try and tell you about it, but you'd be much better off just giving this one a listen. Thanks, guys.
That's a true author name there.
Yeah, right. I've gotten married since then, and I decided to keep my maiden name because I felt like Ryann Bee Gordon is it sounds pretty good for an author name. You know, they like Stephen King. It's just kind of those basic American names that you remember.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for coming on and for reaching out, and I'm super excited to dive into. You brought your book here, The Bridge Inside, and I'm excited to hear about it. It's a topic that I've learned some about, and yeah, let's just dive into what's the story about.
So it follows a woman's journey with PTSD. So the book itself is about psychedelic therapy for PTSD, and I started it probably 8 or so years ago whenever that was really becoming a hot topic, and they were researching MDMA therapy for PTSD, and that was the most groundbreaking therapy for PTSD. So the book itself, I wanted it to not just be a nonfiction book because I am a fiction reader myself. So I did it in a fiction format, but it does talk about real therapeutic practices, and it gets into the science of it, and it just, you know, all of it is real therapy practices, but the story itself is fiction.
Yeah. What sparked the interest in the subject itself?
So my grandpa, my papa, he had PTSD. He was a Vietnam War vet, and he would always, for some reason, talk to me about it and tell me little things that he would remember and how it would affect him. And he would come speak at my schools, and I was always really interested in the topic of PTSD because how it affects the brain is it makes your brain block off certain memories, so it protects you from certain memories, so to speak. So whenever they come up, you have physical reactions to it, fight or flight, or whatever that reaction may be. So in the book, how I framed it was it's a dreamscape. So every other chapter is a dream, and then they turn to nightmares, and then they turn to the therapy sessions, which are very out of body, similar to a dream. And I kind of just wanted to relay or connect how dreams and inside our mind we can find healing, and sometimes, you know, it's about clinical setting therapy practices, so I'm not in any way encouraging people to go practice this themselves, but I do think that there is healing inside our mind whenever we do face our traumas, and sometimes that's impossible to do if you do suffer from severe PTSD.
Yeah, no, I mean I've heard more and more about it where they're doing more mainstream studies on the effects of psychedelics and PTSD, and it's like it is the best therapy for like veterans and the best success rate. And I don't know if it was MDMA therapy, or I know there's other modalities that they'll use. What are some of the other
So there is psilocybin therapy. I think that like microdosing or whatever is something that is used for like struggling addicts.
Sure,
and there's there's different mental illnesses that I guess could be worth looking into. I'm not really a proponent.
Yeah, no, you authored about it. I'm gonna ask you all the clinical stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I write about specifically. So MDMA itself releases serotonin and oxytocin. So whenever you're starting to have a memory, if you suffer from PTSD, that is triggering, and you technically don't remember because your brain has blocked it off, you'll start to have those physical fight or flight effects. And so the MDMA itself therapy, it blocks those effects. So oxytocin makes you feel comfortable and safe, and that's the chemical that's released through breastfeeding and all that. And then serotonin makes you feel happy. So it actually blocks the fight or flight physical reactions whenever someone starts to remember those, and kind of paints it in a prettier light, so to speak. So the therapy itself is really intense. It's 8-hour sessions with two psychotherapists, and you're in a sleeping mask and basically kind of working your way into the memories that your brain has blocked out. And so in the book itself, it follows a woman. Her name's Kara, and she goes through something traumatic. And so every other chapter is a dream. And then after that happens, her dreams, they turn to nightmares where she's, really not remembering what's happening. And you're kind of getting closer to where you see what happens. And then they turn to the therapy sessions where the first session is talking about memories from your childhood or something. And then the second session gets a little bit deeper. And then the third gets a little bit deeper into the root problem and kind of frees her mind from being held hostage by that traumatic experience. So the book itself has some really dark parts and some really kind of spooky parts. And then it also ultimately is just a very light, happy place that it ends in, I think.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And I hadn't even ever heard of a dreamscape. I'm not a huge reader. My wife is. She maybe is familiar with the concept. But is that a writing style that?
Yeah, so kind of like a movie I would compare it to would be like Life of Pi or Big Fish or
Groundhog's Day.
Yeah,
No.
like it's something like those movies that are very creative and don't really make sense. Almost like a dream, And so there's parts where you're kind of wondering if it's a dream or real life. And writing a dreamscape itself was a challenge. I had to research a lot of the different techniques to doing that, because whenever you're having a dream, you don't say it's a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen that are uncanny that let you know that it's a dream. So, you pick up the water and there's no bottom, but the water is in there, but you don't say it like, that was so weird. It just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so you kind of get led to realize that it's a dream. So it was a unique writing style that I had to learn about, but it was a lot of fun.
Was it the first book that you've written?
Yeah, so this is my first novel. I'm working on another one called Poison that I'm about halfway through or so. It's the one that I'm working on is about how there's poison in our food and in the chemtrails and, all over. And so this girl is going on a deep dive into it, and ultimately she's getting kind of lost in the darkness of it all. So that one's going to be kind of a little bit darker as well. And then I'm also working on actually a Christian book that is called Seek and You Will Find.
Awesome.
And that one, I'm just in the first stages of kind of doing the outline. So hopefully I'll have some more out in the next few years. But yes, this is my debut novel.
I'm interested in both of those next ones.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so something interesting actually about this book is the cover. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
beautiful.
I'm from Broken Arrow originally, and Tulsa native. So the book itself is based in Tulsa. So it's a really fun read if you're from Tulsa or from Oklahoma, because there's some other parts of Oklahoma that it goes through. So it kind of draws a picture of Oklahoma. And there was a teacher whenever I was in high school. She wrote the House of Night series, and they were based in Tulsa. And it was just a lot of fun to read a book based in your city. And so it talks about key locations like Riverside and places that we would all know here. And this picture on the cover, actually, I spent a couple years trying to work with artists. I had this whole image of, because the book has a lot of different imagery through it that because it is a dreamscape, there's an image of a tiger, which I'll tell you a funny story about that. And there's honeysuckles and different things. So I had this whole image for the cover, and I had a couple different artists work on it. I was never really happy with any of it, and so I actually spent a couple years working on the cover art. Finally, I was living in Dallas at the time, and I sent my mom out to go take a picture of this bridge because the book is called The Bridge Inside. There's a key element in it and a location that keeps going back to that is a bridge that I just in my head pictured in Oklahoma. It's a red truss bridge like this, those old country bridges that you, I'm sure, have seen. So this picture of this bridge is actually Crybaby Bridge out in Claremore. It's out in Claremore, and it's supposed to be like a haunted bridge. So my mom, I sent her out because she lives in Tulsa, and while I was in Dallas, to go take pictures of a couple of these bridges that I had in mind that were pictured just like the one I described in the book. And she texted me like a bunch of different pictures of like 3, I think, different bridges. One of them, she was like, I was gonna go under and get a picture of this one, but there was a huge bag under there. It looked like a body bag, so I didn't want to go down there. So my mom went out on a journey for me, and she actually got this picture, and I used an application to turn it into a painting.
Yeah.
And then I did the graphic work myself. So that was kind of a journey itself, creating the cover art. And
No, you did great. I love it. That's super cool.
Thank you. So, as far as the tiger story, something kind of funny about this book, I actually finished it. I had spent maybe a couple years, maybe 3 years, 2 or 3 years writing it on and off just in your spare time, because obviously whenever you're working and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to find time to be creative. And so then COVID happened, and that was whenever I was able to finish my book. So it kind of benefited me. So I finished it from bed, just sitting there writing. And once I finished it, I went back to edit it and reread through it. And there was a part where they go to this zoo, which I actually went to with my friends whenever I was a student at OU. It's south of there, and so there's this whole part of the story that's based in this zoo that's like a walk-through zoo, and it was actually the Tiger King Zoo. And so Tiger King was being aired during that time, during COVID, and so I'm like watching Tiger King, and then I had forgotten that I wrote that part about the zoo, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is bad, so I had to add some humanitarian aspects to it, like the tiger, she looks in the tiger's eyes and they're sad type thing, not just like that, but I had to kind of not be condoning the zoo like it sounded like I may have been at first, but for just having gone there. But that was just kind of a funny thing that came up while I was editing.
Well, that's so interesting. Like the duration of the time, like, because it took 8 years, you said?
It took me 4 years to write it.
Okay.
So I had been working on it like 3 years loosely, and then COVID happened, and I finished it over that next year.
When was it officially published?
It was published in 2023.
Okay.
So I had my official book launch in 2024, and I've just been, kind of, because the thing about writing a book is once you finish it, you're kind of sick of it for a little bit because you've read it. I've edited it myself, and then I sent it off to 2 or 3, like my mom, my godmother, a couple people who are avid readers that did kind of like a final edit for me. Let me know if there was any grammar they found, but I edited it myself 7 times. Wow. So after reading it 7 times, you're kind of like, I'm over this thing. So then I kind of gave it a rest for a year after I self-published it through Amazon KDP. And then I did my book launch and kind of, was back interested in it again more so. And then now I'm just kind of, hopefully going to be finishing up a couple other books soon, so I can do the same process with those.
How surreal was it the first time you saw it in print? Like,
Oh yeah,
finished.
it was awesome. I was really pleased with the cover, and especially after so many heartbreaks working with different artists that kind of let me down, I was really had to give myself a pat in the back because ultimately I did this book completely myself. Down to the cover, my mom took the picture, of course, got to give her creds on that. But did all of the interior, I did the editing, and then I put it together with, used an application to put the book itself together. And so I was just really proud of myself.
Yeah. No, you should be. That's crazy. That's like, I mean, because I feel like when I've heard people publishing books, it's like, because there's so many aspects and elements to publishing a book that you probably, when you first started writing it, you're like, I just got to write it. And then you just got to print it.
Well, and that's what I would tell anyone is everybody is a writer, in my opinion. And a lot of people say I'm not a writer, but there's a writer in all of us. If you were to tell a story that happened last week and you were to do voice to text on your phone, then that would be your writing. And so that's what I would tell anyone looking to write a book is just sit down and start writing. Don't, maybe do an outline. That's something that I am doing more for my other books, because this one I kind of just sat down and started writing, and that can take some time out of the creative process. Whenever you get in that writing mood, then you're like, wait, what's the next scene gonna be? So maybe get an outline and then just sit down and start writing, and don't worry about all the editing that's gonna come and all the other things that are gonna come. And then once you do get the book done, definitely utilize help if you can. Go through and edit it yourself, and then have other people who read it and get their thoughts and all that. And then as far as putting to formatting together, seek help if it's hard for you to do, because that can take a lot more time than it needs to. And for the cover and all that, any help you can get, definitely utilize, and don't think that you have to do it or all on your own, because that can take a little bit longer. And then if you do, don't even do it on your own. Don't even worry about it, because you can take all the time you want. If you finish a book, that's great.
You're not on a time frame.
No, not at all.
So I think I saw is for sale on Amazon. Is it for sale in any stores, or how does that work, like distribution wise?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, The Bridge Inside. You can Google it on there. It's available on Barnes & Noble's website. I'm working on, I haven't started yet, but I am going to be working on getting it into those stores. So first I did the Amazon KDP, which is self-publishing, which is really easy to get your book self-published. And then I did it on another publishing format, which gets it into all the stores if you want to. That it makes it available for wholesale. So if you want it in stores, you do it on that. So that made it available on Barnes & Noble website, some other different bookstore websites. And next I'll just be working on getting it in stores itself. And but Amazon's the easiest place to get it.
Dude, what's the process like to get into physical locations? Is it kind of who you know, or is it you go through an application process? Or?
So I would say if you had a publisher, that would be what they would be doing. So as far as local stores, I have it in a few local stores. I have it in Books and Baubles and a couple other local bookstores. In those stores, it's just kind of like on a consignment basis. So you have a few copies of the book, you put it in there, and then whenever they sell them, they pay you for it, whatever you have it listed as. And then, but getting it into major bookstores, that'll be my next feat.
No, I'm just always kind of curious about because there's so many moving parts in all of that. Where
Absolutely.
It's like, especially if you're the artist, if you will, the writer, the creative, then I don't know if you enjoy those aspects of it, or if that's the stuff where you're like, it's kind of a necessary evil.
Yeah, it's not the fun part for me, definitely. I mean, and especially probably for any writer, doing the marketing itself is going to be the part that's like pulling teeth, because, we like to be behind the scenes and we like to just sit and write in, our dark cave or whatever, in our creepy basement. And that is part of the job. job. And so obviously if you are more of that introvert and you really don't want to deal with all that and don't think that that's just a headache, then you can look for a publisher. You do sign off some of your rights with the publisher, and so that's going to be more about getting the exposure. But with this book in particular, I would like to turn it into a screenplay eventually. I'm going to be working on a short film with one of my videographer friends that is just kind of like a very short version of the book that is not really into the storyline, but just kind of about PTSD and uses some of the imagery. So I'll be working on a short film for that. But ultimately, I always pictured this book as a movie.
Yeah.
So that would be the long-term goal. And so if I can get it turned to a screenplay, then I would sell that in a heart second.
Yeah. Yeah, shoot big with it. That would be, because I'm like, how would you shoot, especially if all the imagery, like, to make that into a movie?
Yeah, it would definitely
be very intricate.
Yeah, it would definitely involve some probably CGI. I think that there would be ways of doing it kind of like old school, like what was that movie, like Requiem for a Dream, but less dark. That movie's really dark. But there are some parts of this that are pretty dark and creepy, and so it would not be probably a PG movie.
Yeah. I'm curious to ask. So you said you've got your dark cave to write in. What does the creative process look like getting into like a writing session for someone who is trying to get into deep work or kind of like a flow state, if you will?
I would say definitely eliminate noise. Some people like to turn on different music. I think any music with words is going to be really distracting. Any TV on is really distracting. I always will, my husband, he'll normally have like news or something on, and so if he leaves, I'm like, I turn all the sound off in the house and just sit down, and I type everything because it's just faster. And some people like to sit and write themselves, but I would say get into a quiet space and somewhere that you can kind of zoom out from the world.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because, I think sometimes that's the hardest part is like getting into that place where you can start going, but then whatever it is creatively, even if it's just working on, really any type of work, getting into that state where you're like, I can go, I can keep going.
State.
Yeah, it was like, because if you get pinged, then all of a sudden you're out of it. Where it's like, for some people, maybe you can jump in right away, but I feel like I kind of have major ADHD brain, and it's like, no, I need all distractions gone, like, do not disturb, like, because otherwise I'm out of that. But when you're flowing, you're like, whoa, an hour's gone, 2 hours is gone. Like,
and I'm very OCD, so the thing that gets me sometimes whenever I'm in that flow state is I hit a part where I'm writing about some sort of fact or historical event or something, and I want to research it right then and make sure I get it perfectly right, but it's better to just take a note of that point and keep writing, because you'll get distracted by anything even as small as that, and then you kind of lose your train of thought.
When you jumped in like much deeper into writing the book, like throughout like either your day-to-day or like laying in bed, or like, do you have like a thought like, oh, like this came to me about the book, like gotta write it down? Like I would imagine that's probably just constant.
Absolutely. I have notes in my phone. I have like in my notes app, I have a whole category for writing. I've got book ideas, I've got notes on, like, for example, the book Poison that I'm working on. I have chapter outlines, and then I have the point that I'm at where I have notes for everything. And then right with that book, there's a ton of citations that I'm going towards, like glyphosate sprayed on our produce and all that, and I'll just be on social media, and these different videos will come up that are talking about different poisons that they're putting into our food or into the air or water or whatever it is. And so I'll have to jot down that, and I'll either screen record the video and add it to my Poison album. And so that one is gonna be, it's got so many facts that go into it, and
that
so
could
many
be
citations.
A 10-12 part series, man.
Oh yeah. and it's really kind of stressful to write, because there's a lot of those things that you can't really deal with. But basically, the girl in the book she's kind of like a obsessive organic, journalist, and she's diving into all these different poisons that are being administered to people. But she's also drinking heavily and subsequently poisoning herself. So it's kind of going into this darkness. So that one, I'll be relieved once I finish that book, because it's kind of it kind of is a mind roll.
Yeah. It's like the more you start learning about anything like that, it's like, whoa, it's worse than I thought.
Yeah, but I definitely say take notes, like if in your phone or wherever people take notes. I have so many notes in my phone that and keep them organized, because whenever you just go put a note down, sometimes you have to go through and reorganize those. Keep them organized, and that'll keep your thoughts organized.
Yeah, you're speaking to me on that one. I've got untitled note after untitled note. Yeah,
Right.
it's like, or it's notes app here, this different notes taking app here, post-it note here,
Yeah.
journal here, whatever. So like keeping the thoughts in a central place is definitely.
Yeah, keeping them organized, and then just kind of taking the time whenever you get the time to organize, your specific projects or thoughts that you have. Say you have a book idea and you've got different notes in your phone, kind of going through and organizing those into points, and it is tedious, and it takes you actually pulling yourself aside to do it, but that really helps whenever you get started writing.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I'm excited to read this and learn more about the subject, and
Absolutely.
we'll have to do this again when you are getting close to wrapping your next books as well.
Absolutely. And I brought this for you,
Thank
your
you so
wife
much.
can read it, and you'll have to let me know what she thinks about it.
Yeah, I'll give it a read too. I'm trying to
Absolutely.
read more. So this is a good reason for me to.
Yes, yeah. This one, it gets into the plot pretty quick.
Because she says my books are kind of boring, which she might be right. They're mostly kind of businessy, self-helpy sort of books. So.
You're one of those. Yeah. So that's why I have certain friends who read a lot more nonfiction and stuff. And I like the fiction. I like books that are super creative. I'm a huge fantasy fiction and sci-fi fiction fan. That's probably not a genre that I will ever write, because I have so much respect for, especially for sci-fi and fantasy writers, because of the world building aspect. And for example, like those writers, like George R.R. Martin, for example, with Game of Thrones, I just imagine he's got like whiteboards everywhere, or like notebooks everywhere that are like jotting down all the different facts about the different worlds and families and stuff, and I have to give those authors props.
Then all the different characters have their own lineage and all sorts of
different histories, and it's like, how do you remember what this character happened to their mom at this age, and so you have to have notes for all that. So I give them props, and that's why I really enjoy fantasy and all that, and that's where I kind of got my fix with this book, was with the dreamscape, was adding that fantastical aspect.
Yeah. Well, one more time, just plug where people can find the book, buy the book.
Yeah, so it's The Bridge Inside by Ryann Bee Gordon, and you can find it on Amazon, or if you just Google it, you can find it on Barnes & Noble, some other different bookstore websites as well.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Thank you for coming on and just talking about your book. It was a good time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.